Because even in his day, Paul says, there are many who walk in a different way. And he's not talking about unbelievers. Unbelievers definitely are walking in a different way. There's no need to even talk about them. But he says there are many who walk, about whom I've often told you. That means Paul warned even in his day. This is written around 60 AD, about 30 years after Christ, 30 years after the day of Pentecost. Paul is warning people, there are Christians at this time who you should not follow. I warn you, because they are enemies of the cross of Christ. And the amazing compassion that Paul had for them, this is the thing that spoke to my heart. When he says they are the enemies of the cross of Christ, he doesn't say it with anger or rudeness. It says, I'm telling you this, and while I'm saying it, I'm weeping. Imagine Paul writing this letter and the tears flowing from his eyes as he thinks of people who claim to be Christians. But, those days there was only one church in a city. There were not so many like today. And they all claimed to be Christians. They were the testimony for the Lord in Philippi. And some of them who sat in that church were not a good testimony. And that grieved Paul. He says, what a bad testimony it is before others. I mean, there are some wonderful brothers and sisters here, but there are some. And Paul weeps when he thinks of it. It's like, this is what shows me that Paul was a real father. You can probably criticize some young man saying he's wayward, but how do you think his father will talk about him? His father will talk about him, yes, he's wayward, but his father will talk about it weeping. You can criticize some young sister here in a rude way, but her father or mother will talk about her weeping. And that's how Paul was. And that to me is a great verse that teaches me that Paul was a spiritual father to those people who accepted him as an elder, not to every Tom, Dick, and Harry. No. No servant of God is an elder to everybody. He's an elder to those who accept him as an elder. I've said that for years. I said, I'm not an elder to everybody who sits in CFC, far from it. I'm an elder only to those who accept me as an elder. That's all. And for such people, Paul was a father who took the responsibility of rebuking, correcting, but rebuking and correcting with tears. He was weeping when he said, these are the enemies of the cross of Christ. And enemies of the cross of Christ, as we understand it today, is not just that they hated Jesus crucified. I don't think people today hate Jesus crucified as if that's a terrible thing. I think it is more unwilling to take the cross in their own life. They don't want the cross in their own life. They are enemies of the message of the cross. They are enemies of the message that says you must be crucified with Christ. They are enemies of the message which says you cannot follow Jesus unless you take up the cross every single day and die to yourself. You cannot follow him. They are enemies of that. And I want to tell you, I don't think I have the tears that Paul has, but I want to tell you it's the truth, that there are many, many Christians like that. In fact, the vast majority of Christians, they don't believe that we should die to ourselves every single day and seek to walk in brokenness. I don't know if all of you sitting here believe that. Do you believe, my brothers and sisters? Tell me honestly, answer yourself. Do you believe that you should die to yourself in your relationship with your husband every day? And in relationship to your wife or to other brothers, die to yourself and say, Lord, I want to live before your face and everything? I don't think so, personally. If it were like that, we'd have a revival here. Imagine if everybody sitting here decided from today onwards, I'm going to die to myself. Every single day, I'm going to die. There will be a revival. That is the reason why the devil hides that message from so many people.